What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel and to the first of a series of videos that I'm going to be doing on Tribes of Midgard, as I'm playing this a lot again right now. Season 3 has just kicked off. It's launched a brand new survival mode for the game, and there's a bunch of things that I want to cover for this that can make your transition into this new survival mode a little bit easier and help you find your way around it, as quite a lot of it has actually changed. But this is just going to be like 5 tips off the top of my head as you are starting out with this, and things that you should keep in mind. So starting us off with tip number 1 as we go back into the game is, as you start the game itself here, this is essentially the area which you start in. Now from here on in, the world is your oyster. You're essentially being told to go out and start your first hunt on the first of the giants, and essentially from this point on you can go in any direction you want. You can start gathering gear and all of that stuff, but inevitably you will want to start building your base. Now, while survival mode doesn't work like the traditional survival mode or even the traditional game, in other words that you have a day and night cycle, and at night there's a base for you to defend, more specifically a tree for you to defend, while you are constantly assaulted by hell things, there is however the case that at night hell things do spawn in the world. Now you can avoid these quite easily, but they do spawn around this area here. And for example, if you were to start building your base here, then the hell things could in actual fact spawn, and at night if you aren't here they could overwhelm your base and actually destroy this. Now this is quite irritating, because the point is you would lose all of those materials that you had spent on building those. So if you had made a whole bunch of work desks and things like that and construction stations, those would all be gone. Now up until a point where you actually do build your base with defenses and all of those things, which will be much further on down in survival, really the best place for you to drop all your stations is right below this area where you start. Now first and foremost, because of its general proximity to the tree, for some reason we have no hell things that spawn over here or spawn over here where your first portal is. And more importantly, any hell things that spawn in this area will be aggressively pursued by Aira, and she'll actually fight them off and she'll beat them up. And she always wins those fights. She can't die, so she'll fight them until they die, and basically she becomes like a defender for your base. So if you build all your stuff exactly like I've built it here, then it's going to be safe up to such a point where you can actually relocate to another area, build some defenses, and you're good to go. Now that brings us straight to tip number 2, and that is, as I mentioned right now, at some point you'll want to build your actual official base with nice doors and steps up and steps down and turrets to protect you, towers, all of that stuff. And at that point you'll be thinking, well, I have all my crafting stations here, I could probably just move them over there. Now 2 things you have to bear in mind. Once you dismantle a crafting station, you can't move it, by the way. That doesn't work. Once you dismantle a crafting station, you only get the materials that you use to build the station back. Everything that you've put into a station, like for example my lovely construction rig level 2 here, or for example my armor loom level 4 here, all of the materials that I've spent upgrading to get to that station will be lost. So you have to mentally prepare yourself for the fact that once you do actually move your base and find an area where you want to set up and rebuild everything and build it into houses and, essentially like you do in any survival game where you want to set up your base, you will have to do all of those upgrades over again, aka you will have to farm all that material again. So that's why it's kind of important that once you do decide to do your whole relocation thing and move somewhere else, that spot that you end up picking is the one that you end up staying with. Otherwise, inevitably, if you keep bouncing and moving around, you're just going to ramp up on the amount of materials you need, aka just make it take a lot longer for yourself. And if that's not a concern for you, if you don't mind doing this over and over and over and over again, that is also perfectly fine. But just bear in mind that you never get your upgrade materials that you spend on a station back. You only get the construction materials. Then tip number 3, and this one is really, really important. You will only be able to get to a max level of 50 in survival. What that means is, as you know, in the new survival tree, you're able to actually have an entirely different skill tree and with lots of different choices which aren't available in saga mode or in the previous survival mode. This is a completely revamped portion of the game. There's essentially, this is a combination of all of the classes in the game, allowing you to in a way build your own class, which is really cool. But the common misconception might be that if you play long enough, eventually you'll be able to just get every single node. That is not true. The max level, as you can see at the top here, my level is 35. The max level you can get to is 50, which is not enough points for you to be able to buy everything. So please be sure, and this is your tip number 3, please be sure to plan out your build. Choose which ones you want right from the beginning, or at least have a general idea of which direction you want to go in with that, because you aren't able to respec either. So once you've made some decisions, you are stuck with them. The way that I've set up my skill tree here right now, or my blessings tree, is the choices that I've made, and I will have to close the game and start a brand new version of survival if I want to actually pick different ones. Now, I don't know if later in season 3 we'll get a way to actually essentially respec our skills. Maybe, who knows? Maybe they'll add some functionality near the end of the season. Generally speaking, Tribes of Midgard seasons are quite long, so it's entirely possible. But right now, as of the making of this video, of course, there is no way to respec, so it definitely means you should take some care and plan correctly. Fourth point, what you should absolutely do is remember that in each game, each survival session, 4 vendors will be available, will spawn all across the map. Now, these vendors, generally speaking, the first vendor would be on the island that you start on, but an additional 4, you'll see in my game here, I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 over there will spawn. Now, the location of these vendors is super important, because not only do they sell some materials which might be hard for you to gather, but they also sell, you know, all the runes in the game, essentially, with each one of them covering a different rarity. So you have common runes from the one, you have uncommon runes from the other. And as I make my way up to this guy quickly, I'll show you exactly what I mean. But essentially, getting the location of these 4 vendors super early on in the game is very helpful, and can definitely help you with dealing with, you know, specific materials which you might not be getting a hold of and which you might not be finding in the world. So for example, I can come over here. You'll notice that every vendor has 3 different tables of things that they covered. This guy, for instance, sells a bunch of ingredients, essentially werewolf fangs and so on and so forth. No vendor sells the same stuff. So it is super important for you to find the location of all 4, because that's going to give you access to all of it. Then also the consumables. You'll see that there's, you know, Valkyrie delivery, which gets you your box back if you die somewhere and you spawn very far away. Some souls potions for your ability to have souls on hand. If you accidentally lose some, you can just use this potion and get the souls back. And so on and so forth. Like this guy also sells health potions. Now, again, each one of these vendors will sell different ones. And so therefore, the first one that you find that sells merchant/sorcerer maps, just buy the maps for the other 3 there, and that way you'll find them. Now, as you notice with me, I was lucky enough that in my sort of version of this map, I had 2 other vendors spawn kind of close to one another, and then another one, the 4th and the last one, kind of far away. But essentially all 4 of them, having access to them is going to help out a lot, especially when you're looking for some of those harder to farm materials. Because while they might be available at a premium at these, at least that'll be a guaranteed way for you to get them. Now, last but certainly not least, as mentioned, these vendors also sell runes. Now, this guy in particular here sells common ones, but you get the vendors, like for instance, the one over here for me, sells legendary runes. So this is a fantastic way to kit out your character if you're looking to do a specific combo, like 4 of one rune or 3 of another one or 2 of another one. And because the rune drops are all RNG in this game, the most direct way you can get access to these runes is actually to go to these vendors and just buy it directly from them. And then last but certainly not least, tip number 5. Now, as you move around the map, you'll notice that, for instance, I have these portal stations very close to each one of these vendors, as you can see. Now, that's because these you can, of course, build and place around the open world. In a game of survival like this, the only portal that the game creates for you is the one at the very beginning next to the tree. it is up to you to put portals everywhere else in the world to move around. So it is definitely advantageous to put these portals close to important areas, like maybe next to an area where you can farm a specific boss, for instance, or like in the case of what I'm doing here, I'm putting these portals right next to vendors so I can quickly portal to them and look for something that they have in their inventory and then portal back. But what the tip is actually all about is that you should carry spare portals with you at all times, so you can do this whenever you want to. When you discover a cool new area and you've sailed quite far on a boat, then you can just plop a portal down there and you can very easily teleport back. The next thing, speaking about boats, is definitely carry spare boats on you as well. Now, after you kill the first giant, which for me was down here, you get the station, the dock, essentially the boat station that allows you to build boats. Now, while the station itself requires some very rare material, building the basic boats are super cheap. So there really is no reason for you to not be running around with some spare boats in, just in case your boat gets destroyed or you lose track of where it is, or you come to one continent, you get off, you explore all the way to the other side, and on that side you drop another boat and you continue on. That way you have boats attached to almost every island, and it's another way for you to get around. As you can see here, I run around with some spare portals and some spare boats, but also some spare beds. Now, beds essentially function as a respawn station for you in the game. If you don't have a bed out, then what happens is when you die, you spawn here at the start where the game started you at. But if you are out in the wild, like let's say for instance, I came all the way over here and I wanted to fight this giant over here, and I thought that there was a chance I was gonna die, and I wanted to shorten the distance that I would have to travel to get my shit back and get back in the fight, I could simply pop a bed somewhere here where it's not close to enemies, where it's not gonna get attacked, anything like that, and if I die while fighting that enemy, I will spawn at the bed. So that's a fantastic way for you to essentially create a respawn point for you that doesn't require a massive amount of travel to get back. And that itself right there is the video, as well as the tips, just 5 quick ones to get you started. As mentioned, this is the first in a series of these videos I'm going to do. These were just some general tips. I'm going to discuss which blessings are the best to take. We're going to talk about, rare resources and where to find them. I'll definitely talk about which ruins are also good to use. And I want you to let me know in the comments down below any specific help you're looking for with regards to Tribes of Midgard, even if it's not related to survival mode, even if it's not related to season 3. Just in general, this is a fantastic game. There's never been a better reason to come back to it. It's hella fun. It has a huge co-op potential. You can play this with buddies. This new survival mode is fairly linear and easy in terms of growth and not as punishing as the old survival. So it's a fantastic game to play with buddies and just have a good time all around. But that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. It's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, afternoon, and evening wherever you are in the world. And until next video, fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me.